What is going on to all of you out there in college football land, fellow Big 12 fans, fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another edition of Couz's Corner Happy Hour. This is a live stream, what I like to call my live streams Couz's Corner Happy Hour. Thank you all for jumping on here. If you're watching this back afterward, that's okay too. If you're not catching us live, you can always catch the replay up on my channel. But regardless of how you're watching it, please do me a favor before we get started and hit that thumbs up button for me. Be sure to leave a comment, be active in the comment section, in the chat room, and all those things. And all that stuff helps my channel out, guys. It helps this channel grow to help get more people on this live stream. But what we're going to talk about today, the Clemson Tigers. Major article out today about the Clemson Tigers potentially leaving the ACC even sooner than any of us ever imagined. They could be announcing that they are leaving the ACC as early as 2023, folks. That's right. The Clemson Tigers could potentially leave the ACC or announce they're leaving the ACC as early as 2023. Article today in the Post and Courier by Mr. Gene Sapikoff, I think is how you pronounce his last name. Really good article. I'm not going to read the whole article to you or show it to you. I am going to read parts of it to you here. The really key things that I want to focus on in this video. It talks about, says Clemson fans likely won't have to wait that long to soothe the sting of a relatively disappointing season with big picture perspective. School administrators indicate an announcement about a Clemson bolt from its growing financial disadvantage in the ACC relative to SEC and Big Ten schools is coming soon, probably along with Florida State and North Carolina and perhaps another ACC school or more. And we've all heard about, the Magnificent Seven, they called it, with North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech, Miami, and I think NC State was the other one. But it says, even as University of South Carolina officials try to block Clemson from the SEC. Very interesting stuff there. Let's keep going. It says, how soon? Sooner than later, a Clemson senior administrator said last week when asked about a timetable. Reporter asked, sometime in 2023? Here was the answer. Stay very tuned, the administrator said. It's possible this is about pressuring the ACC into more incentive-based action. But it's certain Clemson officials believe the ACC's grant of rights agreement that theoretically ties member schools to the conference through 2036 can be negotiated. Or, as another Clemson official said, there is strength in numbers if we're not the only departing ACC school doing the negotiating. Now, one thing about that, when Stanford, SMU, and Cal decided they were going to join the ACC, I think one of the reasons the ACC wanted to do that is to basically cover themselves if some of these schools were to leave. Because the way the ACC bylaws are written, at least this is what I've read, if the way the bylaws are written, if the conference gets down below 15 members, and that includes Notre Dame, if they get down below 15 members, then ESPN can come back to the table and give them less money in their media deal. I see somebody tell me to pick up my sound. Let me see if I can do that real quick, guys. Sorry about that. How about this? Is this better sound? But anyway, I don't know what's going on. But anyway, if they get below 15 members, ESPN can come back to the table, give them less TV revenue money. So by backfilling with Stanford, or I guess you could say pre-filling with Stanford, SMU, and Cal, they're protecting themselves against potentially losing at least three members. Now, the way this article is reading, it could potentially be up to more than three members who are leaving. Well, let's keep going with the article. It says, while most Clemson administrators and fans prefer a move to the SEC, the Big Ten is a possibility. The process, perhaps unfolding, might go like this. The Big Ten gets serious about adding a southern tier led by North Carolina, the top non-Notre Dame prize for both the Big Ten and SEC. So the top prize, folks, is not Clemson, apparently, and apparently it's not Florida State. It's North Carolina. Both of those conferences want to plant their flag in the state of North Carolina, a state neither conference is in. And in the Big Ten's case, they get to plant their flag in SEC territory in the southeastern part of the United States. I think that's important to them. Let's continue on. It says the top non-Notre Dame prize for both the Big Ten and SEC, and also including Clemson and Florida State, with perhaps Georgia Tech and or Miami. The SEC counters because they don't want to see the Big Ten in their territory. The SEC counters wanting North Carolina primarily and seeking to block such a major Big Ten or Big 12 move into its footprint. Now, I thought the or Big 12 part was interesting because when I first read that, I'm thinking, does that mean the Big 12 actually has a chance to get North Carolina or Florida State or Clemson? But then as I think about it, I'm like, no, I don't think that's what it means. I think it means that just in general, the SEC doesn't want any other conference planting their flag in the Southeast, any other major conference planting their flag in the Southeast. I think that's what that means. And it says, the article continues, while SEC officials this week again declined to talk about specific schools, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey was to the point in his annual SEC Media Days address while in Atlanta in July of 2022. Sankey said the SEC is happy with the move to 16 members with the additions of Oklahoma and Texas, but I quote, "We'll watch what happens around us and be thoughtful, but be nimble." Very thoughtful and nimble, you can bet, probably including teams of analysts working in a secret basement at SEC headquarters or offsite in Mute Muscle Shoals. Let's continue. Here's some comments. Here's some interesting comments by South Carolina coach Shane Beamer. He says, and I quote, "I mean, every time I look on the phone, there's a school in another conference that's begging to get out of the conference that they're in and into the SEC," end quote. They're leaving. They're just trying to figure out how and when. Now, is he talking about a specific school there in Clemson, or is he just talking about in generalities here? All these schools are trying to get into the SEC. The article goes on to talk about how, Texas A&M didn't block Texas from coming into the league. Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina were the no votes. Talks about how they were the no votes on September 1st in a 12-3 ACC decision to add Stanford, Cal, and SMU. The no votes were Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina, three of the schools that are trying to get out, because adding those three schools hurt their cause and made it harder for them to get out because the conference – remember, guys, if over half the conference votes to dissolve the league, they can do that. Well, now you have to have 10 votes to do that because they're going to have 18 schools, whereas before you only needed, I think the number was 8. Guys, I got a guest joining me here. What's up? Nathan from Big 12 Mafia. What's up, man?
How we doing, Couz? Good to see you.
Doing great. I thank you for hopping on here with me. These people get tired.
No problem.
I was reading this article today, and I was pretty much at the end of it, though, where the news about Clemson trying to get out of the ACC potentially as early as 2023 is kind of the way they hinted there, or it said very soon. What are your thoughts on that, man?
At the end of the day, it's going to come down to what are the legal maneuverings they can do to get out of that contract. Everybody knows how tight it is. In my opinion, if they band together, UNC, Florida State, Clemson, maybe Miami, maybe Virginia Tech, if they get together and they work together to get out of the thing, I think it gives them more power. Right now, it's still, these are all a lot of ideas, but until somebody's ready to write a check, I'm not sure how they pull it off.
Right. David Cummings is a channel member. He's a member of Couz's Corner VIP Club. David, thank you for your comment, my man. He says, zero, and I mean zero of these schools tried to look into future endeavors. They signed a grant of rights when they thought the SEC and Big Ten were done, and they raided the bottom of the barrel looking back.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah. Great comment, David. Thank you for that. But yeah, one thing I found interesting about this article, have you read the article?
I didn't. I've been working today, so you're
Okay.
gonna have to catch me up a little bit.
Okay. Were you able to listen to Greg's show earlier?
No, I had to go
Okay.
into work today, so
That's fine. I drive a lot, big part of my day, so I'm able to listen to shows and
right,
whatnot. So
of
I'm
course.
blessed. I'm blessed in that regard. But it says basically in a nutshell, Nathan. So I don't want to read it all again, but it said Clemson administrators are telling these sources that they are ready to announce very soon, sooner rather than later, is what the way they worded it, that they're leaving the ACC.
Okay.
And the way the writer of the article laid it out was they expect the Big Ten, the Big Ten and SEC both want North Carolina. North Carolina is their top choice, apparently,
Right.
for both conferences. So the Clemson administration wants the SEC, but South Carolina is pushing back. South Carolina doesn't want Clemson in the SEC, basically.
Makes
Uh,
sense. The
but if
same
the SEC,
region.
right, but the Big Ten is also in play because the article, which I didn't read this part, but the article talks about how the Big Ten has stated, you know, AAU is not a requirement to be in this league. We prefer it, but it's not a requirement, you know.
Yeah.
So the Big Ten is still on the table for Clemson. So what this writer believes is going to happen, and I don't know if this is his opinion or he got this from his sources, is that Clemson is going to try to get into, or the Big Ten is going to try to get Clemson and
Okay.
maybe some of these other schools. The SEC is going to intervene because they don't want the Big Ten to plant their flag in their
Right.
region.
Right.
So they're going to intervene and do what they can to try to get them. And at the end of the day, they're going to end up in one of those two conferences.
So
And
what was actually announced new today in the article? Was there any new information that wasn't there a month ago?
yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's new information. I think it's just the fact that it could happen sooner than we all thought. Like, for example,
Right. Right.
one of the quotes in here was how soon, and the answer that the source gave or the administrator gave was sooner than later.
Hmm.
And then they asked sometime in 2023, and his answer was stay very tuned.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, there was that little bit of noise at the end of July, 1st of August,
right.
that Clemson and Florida State were going to do anything they could to get out of the conference, even to the point of telling boosters, Florida State boosters were even being told by administrators, yeah, this is going to happen. And
Hmm.
then you and I both know that fizzled. That sort of
Right.
went away. And now we're into this season. And maybe because the pressure's off, because now we're playing football games, maybe it does open up a little bit more maneuvering room to make a move like this. I could possibly see that happen.
Yeah. John Teal, thank you for the super chat, my man. He says Washington State, Oregon State, and Fresno or San Diego State can backfill. That
Right.
is one option that's on the table because the ACC is going to want to backfill because,
Right.
like I mentioned earlier, if they go below 15 teams, ESPN can come back to the negotiating table and give them less money. The way
Right. Take it
is my
away.
understanding,
Yep.
which is one of the reasons they brought Stanford, Cal, and SMU in as kind
Right.
of to protect against that.
Uh-huh.
Well, according to this article, and of course we all know there's more than 3 teams wanting out of that league.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Florida State, Clemson, UNC are the ones that kind of make the news the most.
Right.
But we all know that. Remember the Magnificent Seven: Virginia, NC State. I think NC State's kind of cooled a little bit. I don't see their name pop up as often, but you've got Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Miami also in the mix.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I saw a comment in there about the grant of rights from John Christophic. And I'm sorry, John, if I mispronounced your last name, but he says Clemson will never leave the ACC because of the grant of rights. I don't know, Nathan, if you caught this, and if you talked about it on your show, I apologize, but I don't know if you caught this in the I think it was the USA Today article the other day that talked about Texas and OU getting out of the Big 12 for less money than everybody thought and all that.
Right.
In
Right.
that article, there was an interesting sentence or quote that a lot of people have kind of glossed over, and I don't think is getting enough attention. And that is that the lawyers of the Big 12 wanted to allow them to do that because they said that. Hold on, I got it I got it typed down here in my notes. It says, the conference bylaws are not as rock solid as originally believed, and objections by remaining schools would likely result in litigation that went on for years. So the Big 12's bylaws were apparently not strong enough
Okay.
in the lawyer's eyes to keep
Right.
Texas and Oklahoma from getting less money.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
so if that's the case with the Big 12, it's my understanding, and I don't know if the grant of rights, I guess the grant of rights and bylaws are probably two different things. But I know from what I understand, the ACC grant of rights was written and kind of based on the Big 12s. They kind of used the Big 12 as a model.
They did, and that came out last year. Yeah, that's right.
Now, if they did, I don't know if they did the same thing with their bylaws or not, but if they did, the ACC's bylaws may also not be very binding either.
Well, and the ACC's only tied to one media partner. Well, I guess they subbed out a little bit of their stuff,
Right.
but it's all ESPN for the most part. CW got a little bit of it, but at the end of the day, if ESPN wants something to happen, it's probably going to happen. The only reason that ACC is still together is because of Notre Dame. If Notre Dame decides to finally make the jump to the Big Ten, I don't know that there's a lot to keep the ACC together.
Oh, it's done.
Yeah.
Greg Flugar talked about that on his show yesterday.
Okay.
If NBC apparently he's hearing from sources that Notre Dame is not happy with where their TV negotiations with NBC are going. Apparently,
I've heard that too. Yes.
And the Big Ten is looking, and the NBC would rather have Notre Dame in the Big Ten because they already have that package.
They already have that package, contract. Right?
And according to Greg, if Notre Dame gets in the Big Ten, it would increase the payout enough in the Big Ten. They would basically give them a lot more money,
right,
for bringing Notre Dame in, and it would be enough money to make Florida State, Clemson, whoever else jump to the Big Ten. Because right now, Oregon and Washington, for example, they came in for a half share, right, 30 million or whatever. Florida State can't do that. Florida State's making more than that in the ACC, right?
Right.
But if they can get 50 million, they would do it probably, right?
Yeah.
Or 60, whatever.
Right.
And Notre Dame being in the league may bring enough money to the conference to basically, the way Greg worded it, they would grease the skids for the other teams to come in.
The flip side of that though is ESPN is not going to roll over and just give up Florida State, Clemson, UNC, Virginia Tech, Miami. They're not just going to let them walk away, because that's major parts of their and contains a goodly portion of their brand value for ESPN and the coverage they have. So, what Greg said is absolutely true. If NBC wanted Notre Dame to move, they could maneuver that and get that to happen. But you could also flip it around and say, if the NBC negotiations aren't going well and Notre Dame wants to still be the boss, they could go to ESPN and say, hey, give us $70 million and we'll come to your league, which is the SEC. So, it's still up in the air. I don't know about this like there's new movement to get anything done this year, though. That I kind of question, because I don't think anybody's in a rush at this point.
The articles even mentioned, it could be this coming out could be pressure. It could be Clemson's administration applying pressure to the ACC to do something.
Absolutely, like Colorado did to the Big 12 and the Pac-12.
Right.
That's right. Yep.
Now Greg seems to think that's not the case. But that's, I don't know if he's getting that from somebody or if that's just his opinion.
He has some good contacts.
He does. So I tend to trust what he says.
Yeah.
Because he's been right on just about everything. Anything he's been wrong on has been a minute detail that really didn't, you know what I mean? Like it might have been the date a meeting took place or something. That's the kind of stuff he's missed on. He's not missed on any of the big stuff, at least not that I know of.
No, you're right. He hasn't. That's true.
Regardless of how much crap he takes on Twitter.
Right. I hear
John Teal, thank you for the super chat, man. He says if Washington and Oregon State, I'm assuming he means Washington State and Oregon State, get that PAC money, it helps offset. Yeah, that's another conversation. I heard Immaculate talking about this today on a show today. I think it was Locked On Big 12. I may have talked about it on your show as well, Big 12 Mafia. By the way, everybody, Big 12 Mafia has a show tonight at what time is your show?
8 Eastern.
So
8
everybody,
Eastern.
I'll be done here by then. So everybody go check out Big 12 Mafia over on his show at 8 Eastern.
We're going to have Bob Thompson on.
Awesome guest.
The godfather of realignment and media matters. So.
And his and Immaculate, if Immaculate's on there, he's always an awesome contributor. He has really thoughtful and insightful ideas and comments. I always love to hear Immaculate's view.
Right.
No pun intended on things. But what John Till's talking about, I think, are apparently Oregon State and Washington State, if they are right now the Pac-12 conference.
Right.
And if the college football, if they remain in the Pac-12 conference, they get like a 2-year grace period, is my understanding.
That's
before
true.
the conference dissolves.
That's correct.
So right now they own the rights and everything to the Pac-12 conference.
But they have
the rights.
They don't have a media deal though, Couz. So they've got the rights to the Pac-12, but they don't have a media deal.
Right, but the college football playoff money would still come to them.
Right, you're correct. Yeah, that's true.
And I'm assuming that's what John Till is referring to here is the college football playoff money. I guess he's saying that would help offset them buying into the league.
Yeah, they could use that. They could use that as leverage to get into the Big 12. Come with us. Come the credits for the NCAA tournament. With us come the big Pac-12 network potentially. So yeah, they would use that as leverage to try to buy their way in, similar to like the ACC did with SMU, Cal, and Stanford. Right? They took them at a lesser amount to help subsidize the move.
Right. Yeah. So that's another thing. I know you've been talking about that on your show, the whole Washington State, Oregon State thing.
Right. For months and months. Yeah.
You guys seem to think that those two schools end up in the Big 12.
I do. I definitely do. It didn't start that way with Immaculate. He wasn't there originally, but I think the group of us is sort of, as we've gone from show to show to show, the more information we've gleaned, I think we're starting to figure out they have to be somewhere. I don't believe they're going to be shunted away to the to the Mountain West. I don't think that happens because they would be a sore in the A4. They don't want schools that used to be auto qualifiers hanging around anymore. And the Big East did that, and it didn't turn out well for a bunch of the organizations. So I think they want to eliminate that as an option.
Yeah,
that's just an opinion.
Yeah. No, I get it. I'm just trying to. I mean, they do hold a lot of power right now because Kirk Schultz is on that college football playoff committee, and they need they need a unanimous vote.
Yep.
To do anything in 2024, 2025.
Yes.
So any changes they want to make, anything they want to do to the college football playoff for 24, 25, Kirk Schultz has to vote on it.
That's correct. Yep.
So he could very easily control this thing with that net, say, hey, you got to do this for me. If you want me to vote this way,
that's right.
He could really. Washington State holds a lot of power right now.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
both of them do. I wish that
to a degree.
I wish we had two schools that could offset in the East Coast, and it would make the transition really easy to bring them in. Because then you're not worried about voting blocks. Because that's the biggest holdup. I can promise you, it's that if you bring in two more Pac-12 schools, that's now 6 schools that could vote as a voting block within the Big 12, and I don't think the original 8 are happy about that. So I think that's probably the biggest barrier right now.
Yeah. Yeah. If and with this whole ACC thing, I mean, the ACC could potentially settle with Clemson and these other schools.
Of course. Yeah. For hundreds of millions. You bet.
And say, okay, we'll let you out for a lower buyout.
You bet.
But in return, and Greg mentioned this today on his show, in return, we keep our A5 status as a conference.
They could try. They could try.
The remaining teams, whoever don't leave, we keep our A5 status. They're allowed to backfill with whoever they can get. It'd probably be some group of 5 schools to backfill. They
Right.
might try to pluck West Virginia and Cincinnati and UCF away from the Big 12. Don't know if that would happen. Probably not, because the ACC at that point would not be the same conference, right?
Not without Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina and
Right.
Miami.
So,
In fact, I don't know why Pitt would stick around. I get the education thing, but haven't we beat that dead horse enough? The schools have to stay together for education. I just like it's athletic leagues. That's what we're talking about is associations and athletic leagues, and it doesn't have anything to do with your grades.
Yeah. Yeah, DFO says that Monty Show is claiming that FSU and Clemson have been in considerable talks with the Big 12.
Yeah, he said that last month that they had talked. I haven't heard anybody confirming that.
I haven't either.
Yeah.
John Teal, man, thank you for the $5 super chat, man. Thank you for the generosity. He says if the Big 12 can bag Washington State and Oregon State, then all you'd have to do is hang out on the grassy knoll to pick off Pittsburgh and Louisville.
I 100% agree. That would be a fantastic conference, wouldn't it?
And think about you'd be the conference of rivalries, man. You'd have
absolutely.
You'd have Pitt, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Louisville, West Virginia, Louisville, Pitt, Cincinnati. That's a rivalry game to a degree. It has a name. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Something River or something.
Right.
You'd have obviously BYU, Utah. You'd have Arizona, Arizona State, Kansas State, Iowa State, Kansas State. I mean, all kinds of rivalries. TCU, Baylor. I mean, the list goes on, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, BYU, Utah, Washington State, Oregon State,
right.
Arizona State. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So it would be a fantastic conference. It would last a long time, and it would be very stable. So,
Hero 75, thank you also for the $5 super chat. He says if Notre Dame would go to the Big 10, they would basically get to pick whoever they want to come with them to make 20.
Yes, absolutely.
My bet that would be Stanford.
Probably. That's what everybody's been told for months and months. I guess we'll find out.
Would they really let them pick their own? Would they really let them pick, or would they just say, "Hey, we want"? But why would Notre Dame not agree to go with, say, North Carolina, for example?
They may. There's multiple options. At the end of the day, the reason the linchpin is Notre Dame is because they're the ones that have the most power. As an individual school, they outrank entire conferences in power. So the thought process is wherever they went, they could write their own ticket if they wanted to drive it into a conference. But nobody can convince them to join a conference. They want to be their own thing. So
guys, real quick, as you see scrolling along the bottom of the screen, I have the names of what I call my pub level channel members. Those are the ones who pay $2.99 a month. There are some perks that go along with that, like getting your name on the screen. You get special privileges like your comments get read first in chats, things like that. Sometimes I release videos earlier to my channel members. I also have a club level, which is $4.99 a month. The names of those individuals are on the bottom of the screen now. I've added a couple extra perks for these members. Number one, I'm starting to release some special videos on occasion with limited ads to my members, club level members. And I'm also, I just started a Discord server where I share, if I get some sort of what may be confidential information or information that's not made public yet, I will share that with those folks in that Discord server. So if you want to be a part of that, become a club level member here for $4.99 a month, and you can take advantage of those perks. And if you want to do the $2.99 a month, that's an option as well. I just want to throw that out there, guys, so you know what's going on with that, with those names at the bottom.
Justin, did you give me your address so I could send you one of my rally towels?
I did not, man. I meant to.
Okay.
I just forgot.
Send that DM to me because I'm setting up on a table this week. I'm going to put everything together and send them all out. So I want to make sure I get you one.
Oh, and speaking of that, I forgot to do that, man. I'm like you. I've been really busy with work too.
Oh, so sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking of the towels, though, I've all of my channel members get a free drink koozie.
Nice.
With my channel logo on it. So, a matter of fact, my club level members get a koozie and a bumper and a sticker.
Oh, that's cool. That's
pub
great.
Pub level gets a koozie. So, just want to throw that out there. And obviously, if you want to make sure your chat gets read here as the crowd gets bigger here in the chat, if you want to make sure I see your chat, obviously you can drop a super chat and it'll highlight your chat so that I see it easier. But Nathan, man, as far as this conference realignment stuff, so you don't think, in your opinion, you don't see anything happening this year or this football season?
There's really no rush. The major bloodletting has already occurred, and that was the Pac-12. There's no rush at this point because we went past that August 15th date for the ACC to declare. They have until next August 15th to make the declaration again to get out, whatever that declaration means. And there's an incentive to have it done before then, but not between now and at least the off season. I don't see a rush to do anything unless something breaks with Notre Dame, which obviously it could. But I just don't see what the reason would be to force a change right now.
I think there's some speculation that, they want to get this done in time for that 12-team college football playoff next year.
Right. They do. But again, that's locked up until Oregon State and Washington State get settled. They're not going to let that renegotiation happen. They keep rescheduling it down the road until that settlement happens in the Pac-2, and then you hopefully get those two schools into a power conference, and I hope that's the Big 12.
Yeah. And Oresco apparently keeps jockeying back and forth on whether he wants to accept the new 5-and-7 format or stay at the 6+6 format. So, and like Greg said on his show today, it would probably behoove the Group of Five conferences to make a deal and work with these Power Five conferences. So if they want to keep access in the future.
Yeah, that's true. There's also the thought that, if you keep it for 2 years and they can't take it away from you, it's already been given without a unanimous vote. That gets you another school from the Group of Fives that could actually be in the playoff for the next 2 years. Now, would that burn bridges? Yeah, it's possible that would be a damage, but they could do it.
Because in 2026, it all starts over again with a brand new
renegotiation, and there's even starting those conversations now. Yeah,
right,
for sure.
Well, Bomber, I know you got to run, man. I appreciate you hopping on here. I know you didn't have a lot of time, but
that's okay. I'm glad to help, Couz. Anytime.
Yeah, man. You and I just where our schedules work out. We never get a chance to do this very often. So it's refreshing.
We're going to have BYU West Virginia coming up.
Absolutely.
And then as we get farther down with the conference season, we'll have more opportunities. So it'll come. Don't worry about it. I'm not sweating it.
Are you coming to Morgantown by any stretch? By any chance?
I can't make any trips this year. Okay. I spent the money that I reinvested into my channel and like the rally towels and stuff like that. I don't have that money yet. I'm hoping next year I have a full travel budget, and then I'm going to do some road trips.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm hoping to do that eventually. But I'm like you right now. I'm not there yet.
Right. It'll come though.
But hey, if you guys want us to do live shows from all these Big 12 venues and stuff, we need your help, man. We got to have your all support because we get a little bit of money from YouTube, but it ain't a lot.
That's right. It isn't.
We do this because we like it, man. It's not really.
Yeah.
We enjoy the interaction and we just love talking college football. But listen, man, I'll let you run. I know you have to have a show to prepare for. Okay. Everybody, don't forget to subscribe to Big 12 Mafia. Also, look him up on Twitter. Let me put his Twitter back up here. It's at B12 Mafia.
Yep.
On X, Twitter, whatever you call it.
Right.
So interact with him there. And he also has a show called The Holy Rival Show where he and someone called Wild Ute talk a lot about the BYU-Utah rivalry. So very interesting stuff. Go check it out. Nathan, thanks again
appreciate your time, Couz, and the shout out's awesome. Again, check us out tonight, 8 Eastern, just in about a half hour. Bob Thompson. Anyway, we'll talk to you later. See you later.
See you, man. Good night.
All right. Peace.
Awesome. Glad to have Nathan on here with us. Let's see if we can get to some chats. Yeah, Mafia rules. Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets to the Big 12. That wouldn't be a bad addition, AAR. Get you in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm sure the SEC wouldn't like the Big 12 planting their flag in Georgia, but you know what? If they got a chance. Casey Anthony got away with it. Says Louisville, Pitt, Virginia Tech, and Duke or Syracuse to Big 12. I could see that happening, especially with the emphasis that Brett Yormark wants to put on basketball. I could see Duke potentially landing if they don't get picked up by the Big 10, which I don't think will happen. I could potentially see Duke or someone going to the Big 12. Another thing I wanted to touch on regarding this whole and Conquer, I wanted to address this comment too. Nebraska wants out of the Big 10. Man, they would be giving up what, $50 million to do that? $40 million, something like that. $40 or $50 million in revenue to go back to the Big 12. I just don't see that happening. Maybe down the road, if the Big 12 is ever able to close the gap with the Big 10, then maybe Nebraska would reconsider that, because Nebraska would add value to the Big 12 and make their conference more valuable. But I don't know that it would. I don't think it would reach Big 10 status, because you've got programs like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State in that Big 10 that really draws a lot of revenue, a lot of eyeballs to the TVs, those kind of things. So, and the Big 12 just doesn't have a team like that in it. And I'm a Big 12 guy. I'm a West Virginia fan. Our conference does not have a team that draws eyeballs like Ohio State or Michigan or any of these teams, or the Penn States of the world. Even Wisconsin has a pretty big fan base. But another thing I want to touch on regarding this whole conference realignment stuff is how, when you look at the part I talked about when Bomber was on, the Big 12 bylaws, by them letting Texas and OU out early, and the attorneys saying their bylaws weren't as basically as ironclad as rock solid as they originally believed, does that mean other Big 12 schools could potentially get out earlier or try to get out of the league? For example, we've heard Kyle Whittingham at Utah talk multiple times about Utah will not be in the Big 12 forever. Things are going to change, yada, yada. He's even went as far as to say he thinks them and UCLA will be in the same conference again. Does that mean Utah will be able to find a way out with the Big 12? Does it mean Arizona State, who really doesn't want to be in the Big 12 in the first place, does it mean they find a way out? We've all heard that Kansas has been eyeballing the Big 10 for years now. They are an AAU school. Do they try to find a loophole do they use this same quote unquote loopholes or whatever that Texas and Oklahoma used to try to get into the Big 10? Can West Virginia, let's use, if there's any shot at West Virginia getting into the SEC, which I'm still not there yet that they will, but if there's any chance, could they use it to go to the SEC? Or let's just say, if the ACC, even if they lose Florida State and Clemson, or even UNC and Miami, but yet they're able to remain a viable conference, they still have Stanford, they potentially still have Cal, they'd still have Pitt, maybe Virginia Tech, maybe NC State. They'd still have some solid brands in that conference. Would West Virginia prefer to be there than in the Big 12 in order to reduce their travel expenses? I don't know. I'm just saying. I don't know. I'm not saying they would or wouldn't. I personally would prefer to stay in the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is more secure going forward. I really like the Big 12 being in the hands of Brett Yormark. I think he's doing a lot of good things with the conference. I think he will find ways to add revenue to the Big 12 because of his ideas, his ability to think outside the box, and just his overall work ethic. Man, he's a go-getter, and he's always looking for the next idea, the next big thing. So I would prefer West Virginia stay in the Big 12, but I'm not the administration. The administration has complained about the travel for a long time. It has gotten better now with Cincinnati coming in. So, but as long as they keep adding teams from the western part of the United States, it's not really helping West Virginia's travel at all. So, it's a possibility they still could at some point end up in the ACC down the road. Who knows? And of course, we've talked about Notre Dame and how Greg Pflugar has talked about if Notre Dame gets out of the ACC, that will open the door for other schools to leave as well. Based on, number one, it would provide more money for these schools to make in another league, in the Big 10, for example. And also it could, and I think they're even, and I'd have to go back and watch Greg's video about this again, but I think he made a comment about the way the ACC bylaws are written. I think it might even open the door for that to happen if Notre Dame leaves. By the way, guys, I need to give a shout out to my channel sponsor here real quick. I forgot to do that early. This episode is brought to you by Dutch Miller Automotive, where friends and family pricing means you get the best deal right up front on any new or pre-loved vehicle in stock every time. With brands like Chevrolet, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Kia, Hyundai, Ford, GMC, Buick, and Subaru, the Dutch Miller Automotive family is always growing and ready to put you in the car or truck you've been searching for. Check out our inventory across West Virginia at DutchMillerAuto.com or come in today to the home of friends and family pricing, only at a Dutch Miller Automotive store near you. And guys, Dutch Miller also has stores in Wytheville, Virginia, Bristol, Tennessee, El Dorado, Kansas, and I'm sure there are others out there as well. But go to their site at DutchMillerAuto.com. There's always a link in the description box if you want to go to their site and check them out. And I really appreciate them supporting my work here at Couz's Corner. John Till, another super chat, man. John, you've been very generous tonight, man. I appreciate the love. He says, everyone will turn in their guns before Nebraska walks. Yeah, they're making way too much money in the Big Ten, in my opinion, for them to walk. See if I can get to some chats here. Louisville Cardinals, Marshall University to the ACC, Appalachian State to the ACC, ECU Pirates to the remaining ACC. Is Kansas worth $80 to $100 million a year? They are not, Tony. Not right now, anyway. But I mean, look at what Oregon and Washington did. They're going in for half a share. You know, that gap has gotten so wide now. Teams can leave their conference, take a much smaller payout from the conference they're entering, and still make more money than what they're making in their current league. David Hackett, another channel member here, VIP member here at Couz's Corner, he says, hey, Couz, hearing that Clemson officials have spoken to SEC about going there and South Carolina is most likely in, will agree just like Texas A&M did with Texas. Yeah, actually, David, I don't know where you heard that, but I was actually reading an article earlier from the Post and Courier that talked about that. When the show first started, I was reading that article, and that's essentially what they said. I don't know if it said they were talking to the SEC, but I think it said they've talked to the SEC and the Big Ten, and either conference is an option for those two. They would prefer the SEC, but would also go to the Big Ten if it was a better option for them, or they couldn't get in the SEC for whatever reason. And that same article talked about the A&M Texas thing and how at the end of the day, they're going to have to do what's best for the league, and that South Carolina would probably end up, accepting them in at the end of the day if they thought it was best for the league, and if it kept the Big Ten out of the SEC territory in the Southeast, which is another issue, then they would also probably vote for it for them to come in. JC Atkins, thanks, man. He says, holy cats, I came in live but late. It's rare that I catch you live. I know I don't go live a lot, man. I need to start doing these more often. I'll just be honest with you guys. Live streaming is not – it's not my comfort zone. I'm not good at it. I do better when I'm recording and I can edit out all my oohs and ahs and all my crap. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, when I'm live, I have a hard time paying attention. You can ask Paul. If you guys know Mountaineer Paul, my partner, I have extreme tunnel vision, man. I can hardly multitask at all. So when I'm in a chat, on a live stream, trying to follow the chats and all the other stuff, man, it really, I have a hard time staying focused on what I'm trying to say. So if you guys hear me rambling and stuff on live stream sometimes or losing my train of thought, that's why. I'm just not good at it. I admit that. My strength is having everything, like my notes or my outline or whatever there. I can use that. I can do a couple different takes. Sometimes I'd have to do multiple takes. I do what I say, what I need to say, then I can go back, edit it, clean it up. That's where I feel more comfortable. But I do like to interact with you guys as much as I can. So when I have an opportunity, like when I'm in a hotel and I don't have to, and I'm not disturbing my family, I try to do these. John Teal says all the eyeballs on Colorado Big Ten and SEC could bid war. I'm assuming you mean Colorado, right? Oh, you mean a bid war for Colorado? Okay, I think I know what is that what you're saying, John? That's possible. That's possible, but you got to think though, I've made videos about how valuable Colorado will be to the Big 12 if Coach Prime stays. But I don't think, number one, I don't think he's going to stay for a really long time. He might stay 5, 6, 7 years, maybe even 10 years. Who knows? But once he leaves, they won't be as valuable anymore. You have to strike while the iron's hot with Colorado, and hopefully the Big 12 is able to do that by getting them in next year. Too bad it's not this year, right? Notre Dame, FSU, Clemson, and maybe North Carolina is my list. Yeah, that's the 4 teams I see as the most likely to leave, Tony. Are the 4 you listed: FSU, Clemson, Notre Dame, and North Carolina, because I think those, obviously we know Notre Dame is highly coveted by everyone, mainly the Big Ten. North Carolina is coveted by both the Big Ten and SEC. I think they're number 2 on the list behind Notre Dame. And then obviously next you've got Florida State and Clemson, who I think would be a good addition to either of those conferences. It would be really cool. Now, I know this is a long shot, and I know Monty has talked about this on his show, and I don't know that I necessarily believe it, but it would be really cool if some way, somehow, Brett Yormark came up with some idea, some outside-the-box creative way to get those teams in the Big 12. Wouldn't that be awesome? I don't know what that would be, but maybe by utilizing basketball somehow, or I don't know. Maybe helping broker some deals here and there. I don't know. But if he was able to somehow get a couple of those teams into the Big 12, that would be awesome. The SEC is geographically better for travel and fans. Absolutely, David. And I think that's another thing I wanted to touch on. One piece of that article, I don't even know if I read that piece, but when it talked about, when they were voting, when the ACC was voting to let Stanford, Cal, and SMU into the ACC, Florida State, North Carolina, and Clemson were the 3 no votes. And the reason they gave was the travel. I find it a little bit hypocritical that they say that, and then they'll turn around and join the Big Ten where they have to travel to Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. Seems a little hypocritical to me, don't you guys think? I'm sure they were just using that as I'm sure that deep down there were more reasons besides just that. It wasn't just travel, but they used that as their talking point, publicly, because they don't want to really say in public what the real reason is, obviously. But then if you say that and then turn around and join the Big Ten, not a good look. ESPN would up the money for those ACC teams. Would be awesome. Yep, I agree. It's all about the Benjamins, man. All about the Benjamins. And that's why I still think the SEC is the more likely candidate to land, at least to land Florida State and Clemson, because like Bomber mentioned when he was on here with me, there is no way ESPN is going to want to let those schools go with the kind of ratings they bring. So, them and the SEC would get together and say, hey, man, we got to make this work. We cannot let them go to the Big Ten. We need their games on ESPN. So they would try to broker some kind of deal to steal them. I don't want to say steal them away, but make a defensive move to keep them from going to the Big Ten. I think that's going to end up what's happening. This is just my gut feeling. I think Notre Dame and North Carolina end up in the Big Ten, and I think Florida State and Clemson end up in the SEC. That's just me totally. I have no sources on that. It's just me totally making an assumption based on what I know and kind of reading the tea leaves. John Teal says, true that we have no idea how long Prime will stay, but the same argument could be made for Clemson. Without Dabo, they go back to maybe 7, 8 wins. That's very true, John. Very true. But Clemson, well, I'd have to go back. I don't remember Clemson being as bad as Colorado was. Colorado has been really bad for a decade, man. I mean, really bad. One of the worst teams in the country. And then I don't know that Clemson was ever down that much, but your point's well taken. Your point's well taken. And I'll be honest with you, unless Dabo embraces the NIL and the transfer portal, he may be at 7-8 wins. He might get to 7-8 wins a year. Gamecock Chuck says, we really don't care if they join. Thank you for being on here, Gamecock Chuck. Everybody go check out his channel. He has a channel as well. What do you mean? You talking about the fans' perspective, Chuck? You don't care if they join? I want to hear if I'm assuming you're talking from a fan's perspective. I want to know. And Hank, you're welcome, man. I assume you're talking about the comment about I'm trying to remember which comment it was. Was it about having 10 men on the field? Comment? Coach don't care, man. I think Coach has a pretty thick skin. Yeah, people were making comments about West Virginia last night too. I don't think he wanted me to see, but it is what it is. David Hackett, who's a VIP member here at Couz's Corner, he says, I see Brett Yormark looking at Miami as travel partner for UCF in Big 12. Great. Hadn't thought about that. I see FSU and Notre Dame to Big 10 to get to 20. Yeah. Very well could be. David Hackett, that's a very reasonable take. See. Okay, accounting to 11. That's what I thought you were referring to. Yeah. That was a funny comment. Beers Sports Lounge. Thanks for being on here, man. Everybody go. I think he has a channel as well. You want to go check it out. But yeah, if you guys, I'm about to wrap this up here. If you guys want any comments, I'll touch on as many as I can here to close this thing out. But if you want to make sure I see it, feel free to drop a super chat, highlight your comment for me. It'll get read make sure I see it and it gets put on the screen. But I'll still try to hit some of these other ones too. WVU is doing better than anyone thought. Yeah. And it's so far, but this weekend's going to tell us a lot more, man. TCU, I think TCU's a pretty good team. So we'll see how good our defense really is if they can hold TCU to under 20 points too. Tony says, I don't think Disney wants to spend money right now. Their stock hit a 10-year low today. Wow, Tony. I didn't know that. I knew they were having some financial issues. Didn't realize it was that bad. Clemson article says Gamecocks are opposed. I think it did say that, but I think that's more the administration maybe, Hank. I don't think, or the coaching staff maybe. I don't think the fan base cares. I think the fan base kind of embraces it because of the rivalry, actually. That's kind of how I understand it. Steve Ohio, Florida says Notre Dame, North Carolina to Big 10, FSU, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Virginia to SEC, Miami, Pitt, Louisville, Virginia Tech to Big 12. That would be awesome. If West Virginia could get back in the same conference with Virginia Tech, Louisville, Pitt, and Miami, man alive, that'd be like the old Big East days again, man. That would be awesome. Think about some of those games. You'd have Pitt, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Louisville, West Virginia, Louisville, Cincinnati, Miami, Central Florida, Pitt, Cincinnati. Man, that'd be great. I'd love to have that happen. I could live with that. I could live with that. Steve Ohio. Steve Ohio. I'm assuming it's Ohio, Florida. Thank you, Beers. I appreciate you, man. Browns and Beers, another member of the VIP club, says, I think we lose this weekend, but still managed to finish about 7, 5, 8, and 4. That's what I've got, Browns and Beers. I had us coming out of the Houston game with a 3-3 record. I now think we come out of that game with a 4-2 record, which sets us up to hit that 7 to 8 win mark. So I'm with you, man. I've got us. I predicted for us. My prediction video comes out tomorrow, so I don't want to spoil it. I'm not going to give you everything, but I did predict us to lose against TCU. I'm going to make you watch the video to find out by how much. And by the way, I'm going to plug it. I have a special guest on to talk about TCU. A lady by the name of Melissa Treebwasser. She's on a podcast called Frogs Insider. I think she may even do some writing as well. I'm not sure, but nonetheless, she covers TCU. She was on my show to help preview the game, so it should publish sometime tomorrow. I wanted to get it out today, but I wasn't able to because I was traveling for work. Browns and Beer says I'd go to Louisville about every time we played in football, basketball, underrated city. You know, Browns and Beers, that's actually a city I have never been to, man. And I would love to get to it sometime. Interesting. You make me want to go there now, hearing you talk about it like that. Beer Sports Lounge says WU and Pitt and Cincinnati Louisville in the same conference. Boy, it would be like the good old days. You got that right. Hank says a stout defense can give TCU trouble, and our defense has played well. Now, a lot of people are saying it's because the two teams we've played have been bad. But guys, Texas Tech, in my opinion, is not that bad. They dropped 30 points on Oregon, and Oregon shut Colorado out, basically. So, West Virginia's defense, I think, is a good. Now, TCU's probably the best offense we've played so far. I will say that. So I don't see us holding them to 13 points like we did Texas Tech, especially if, Chandler Moore stays healthy and things like that. But I do think we can keep them under 30. I think West Virginia's defense will hold TCU under 30 points in this game. The problem is with West Virginia, can their offense score enough to win? That's been our downfall. David Hackett says, thanks, Couz. As always, a fantastic show. Man, I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate you guys hopping on here with me to listen to me do what I love to do, which is talk college football. And I was sitting laying in bed last night thinking about once the season kicks in, my brain shifts to on the field and talking football and X's and O's and all that stuff. I have a hard time readjusting my brain to talk conference realignment again in the middle of the season. I don't know what it is, but when I saw this story come out today about Clemson, I was like, man, I've got to get on and talk about that because this is a huge story. Luke Bart, another member of the Couz's Corner VIP Club, he says, as much as I would love that as a WVU fan, I don't think it helps the conference as much as it helps WVU to add those four. Interesting take, Luke. Man, that's a very unselfish and objective viewpoint, man. And I appreciate that. I still think it would help the conference because you would get them into some new markets that they're not in right now. And when you add those rivalry games to the league, man, it brings better TV ratings as well, which I think would be a huge boost for us when we go to renegotiate TV deals and things like that. Have a good night, man, and let's go Mountaineers. Thank you, Luke. Let's go, man. We're saying the same thing in Norman. That's funny. DF All says, Steve O'Halfloy, who would be in the region for UCF if the Southern teams of the ACC are going to the SEC or Big Ten? It's a good question, DF Ost. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I was able, my partner Mountaineer Paul and I were able to interview Ren Baker, the West Virginia Athletic Director. The football portion of the interview is on his channel, Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. We asked him a few questions related to basketball, West Virginia basketball, that are over on our basketball channel called Hoops from the Hills. If you guys want to go check it out, Hoops from the Hills, our interview with Ren Baker, the basketball portion of the interview. We asked him some questions about the basketball program and whatnot. And we figured those would be better suited on the basketball channel. Yeah, you did mention Miami, Steve. I forgot about that. He thinks Miami would be a great travel partner for UCF in the Big 12. I'd love to have Miami in the Big 12, man. Bringing the U to the Big 12, that'd be fantastic. I'd look forward to playing them every year as a West Virginia fan. An identity on the offensive side rather than 5 different aces. Yeah, I mean, we have an identity. We like to run the football. The problem is, number one, last week we didn't even run it that well, to be honest. Not like we did the previous week. And then, even though that's our identity, we still have to be able to pass it a little bit, right? I mean, air passing is atrocious. We need to be able to pass it enough to keep the defense honest. Right now, teams are just stacking the box, man, and saying, okay, beat us throwing the football. And so far, we've been able to do just enough to get by because our defense has been so good. But, I mean, you can't hold every team to under 20 points. Unless our defense is an Iowa-type defense, I don't see that happening. Anyway, well, guys, listen, I'm going to call it a night here. Had a pretty busy day today, so I'm going to try to relax. I may go over and try to listen to a little bit of Nathan's show over at Big 12 Mafia. So if you guys want to go check that show out, he puts out some really good content. Again, guys, if you want to join the channel, it's an easy way to contribute monthly, $2.99 or $4.99. There's 2 different levels. I've added a couple extra perks for the $4.99 level members because I feel like I don't do enough for those folks. Again, shout out to my sponsor, Dutch Miller Auto. Here are my club level members, the ones who pay $4.99 a month. David Cummings, Sasquatch 304, Browns and Beers, FSU 45, PW Riggs, Cody Cutright, Timbo, Big Dan T, Denny Allen, and Timothy Hetrick Jr. Then the pub level members who pay $2.99 a month. We've got Outlaw of College Football, Luke Bart, S.A. Tackett, Brad Cheney, Jeremy Croy, Tom Reinhart, Kenny Evans, Vernon Sheldon Witter, David Hackett, Mike Rayner, Travis Anderson, Roy Harrison, Heath Stokes, and Alice Stokes. Thank you all. Oh, and Matthew 1981. Thank you all for the support on the channel. And thanks to all of those people in the chat room. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you haven't yet. Even if you're on your way out, go ahead and hit that for me because it helps that algorithm. If you're watching this on the replay, hit the thumbs up button. Helps the algorithm. You guys have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, and Q Country Roads. Can't forget that.